Welcome to Boiling Point, the podcast to motivate ever-evolving entrepreneurs and forward-thinking movement pioneers. Our hosts, filmmaker Greg Hemmings and executive coach Dave Vale, are turning up the heat in the world's business communities. Our interviews with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and movement makers are raising the temperature of inspiration. Live from the hottest studio in this quadrant of the universe, here are Dave and Greg.
Listen, if you guys are going to make fun of me because I don't know who Nick Suzuki is, because I'm not totally up on my hockey, I'm pressing record. I want the Boiling Point audience to understand what I have to go through just because I don't know hockey as well as you do, Dave.
Greg, it's David Suzuki's son. He's this great player for the Habs, and he's had quite playoff, and I think he's a rookie, is he not, Andy?
Second year, maybe, I think, but okay. He has become my new favorite player. Love that kid.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, what's fun to watch him in this. What's the guy? Is it Caulfield? What's neat about it, Greg, is they're not very big guys playing in a relatively. It's not the big man game it used to be, but it's neat to see smaller players that are just so talented, and just to be able to play in a really physical series against these big men, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Okay, that's great. And for our listeners, our good friend Andy Clark, who we're interviewing today, his name on the Zoom came up as Nick Suzuki, and I just said it was a great name. And then the shock and awe was there that I didn't know who he was, but what a cool story! I love that.
So there's another story about that is my oldest child, Liam, he's got this hair that's just, it's like everywhere. And I remember I had a mullet and all that kind of stuff when I could grow hair, right? I'm wearing a hat now. And so we've been bugging him about just cutting his hair a little bit, you know what I mean? Cause I don't know, it's just this thing that kids do now, and they straighten it a certain way and, whatever. And I said, I was saying to Marilyn, let's just let it go. And then I'm starting to look at him like, dude, you got to cut your hair, man. Like, this is getting out of control.
You got to send me a picture.
So I will. So then he we're driving somewhere, and it was last when the Habs started playing the Jets. So they got through the Leafs, and then they went on to the Jets, I think is how the progression, right? And then he said, I will shave my head, Dad, if the Habs win the cup. And now he's not looking like after last night's overtime game. He's like, he comes into my room like early in the morning before school. He goes, can we change that bet, Dad? Can we do something else? Because now he's getting worried, right? Because he thinks he might. And on my only response to him when he says that, I go, zzz. Yeah. He's like, he doesn't think it's funny anymore. So Andy Clark, Clarkie Consulting. Clarkie is probably a nickname that you got playing hockey or something.
You got it. Yeah.
I knew it.
And Andy, just before we get started, are you at Planet Hats right now? Where are you?
I am. Yeah.
It's so funny.
Good eye, Greg.
I don't even know what it is. I think it's literally the angle of the room you're in, because I've filmed in that very breakout room before.
Okay.
And I see a little bit of green out there somewhere. So geez, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, it's so good to have you on here, man. And what a treat to hear what you're up to during your next phase of your working life, man. Because you're with a really progressive accounting firm for a very long time, and in fact, I was on a podcast. I was on the other side of the microphone with a podcast with you guys back quite some time. I think Dave was as well, actually. And here we are now. And you've got a new gig going on. You're helping companies, get tight. And let's hear it. Let's hear what.
I really wanted Andy to come on because I want guest listeners to hear a little bit of what he's doing. I met Andy when he was practicing law. And doing that whole grind, and I kind of thought maybe the billable hour isn't really your long-term game plan, Andy. It was kind of my sense. You have a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak, and so over the years I got to know him, and I was he has a great blog that comes out, I don't know, probably every month or so. And if you're a business owner, especially like a kind of smaller medium business owner, it's really helpful stuff. So I actually hired Andy to do some work with me in vision coaching, and help us set a 3-year, 1-year, and 30-day goals, or kind of a plan, like a planning session, but set some goals. But when people set goals, and with coaches, he set a lot of goals. He's got it broken down in a really interesting way, and the impact. Well, he has things like he suggests you get profit goals, impact goals, and enjoyment goals, and the impact goals for me were so important, and what it's done for me in terms of the business, as I've far exceeded what I was expecting to do. And Greg threw me off there because all of a sudden I saw him as a boat owner. He had a picture, but now I can't hear him.
Sorry, guys. I lost my internet there for a moment. That was very odd. Very odd.
Yeah. So
anyway,
I was just giving kudos to Andy, and some of the success we've had in the last, I guess 7-8 months as a result of some of the work. So I wanted to get him on because I've been telling people about it, and I really think it's important, and it's a neat kind of methodology he has, whether you're a business owner or not. And it's really around the goals you're setting, and then and the building blocks you use. And I'm using all the right language, eh, Andy?
You are.
Yeah, I'm a convert. I'm a convert. So, but over to you, Andy. Like, sorry, I'm stealing your thunder here, but
keep going. You're doing a better job than I could do.
I'm just really, and I want to talk specifically about when we get to it, but just that whole idea of like, the impact goals and enjoyment goals and how important they are, and how I realized I was chasing the wrong goals through this process. So even at my with the gray beard and stuff, I'm learning a lot. So anyways, I learned through this process, and I've really enjoyed, and Andy continues to keep me accountable, which is really great. So, but so what made you get going, like, kind of even put this methodology together, get out and want to help small business and medium business owners? I know you do more than that, but that's a big driver of your business, I believe.
Yeah, it sure is. Like you say, I did practice law for 10 years, and you were right to have surmised that it wasn't really, I don't think, why I was put on this planet. I love lawyers, have a lot of respect for lawyers, but the business model, at least the way that I was practicing it, wasn't really for me long term. And so I made that decision about 10 years ago that let's go in a different direction. You talk about an entrepreneurial streak. So when I left law, I became sort of an operations business development kind of growth person for a wellness business. And I learned a lot about the wellness industry through that. And even when I was practicing law, I was really into what is health? Where does it come from? What are the things that you can do to set yourself up for success from a health and wellness perspective? And so I actually had this great idea, or so I thought, was to try to sell wellness to lawyers. So I actually incorporated a company, and still my company name, my legal name is called Wellness Lawyer Inc.
Nice.
And I thought, I'm going to sell wellness to lawyers. I'm going to transform this industry. And I chased that down for a couple of years. I got in front of enough people in Canada, USA, and everyone told me it was such a great idea, but it didn't work. And so I was unsuccessful in changing the legal landscape and the business model for lawyers. But that was kind of my first real run at entrepreneurship, and I learned a lot through, as most entrepreneurs do, through failure. But for the most of the last 10 years, I've been kind of in operations roles in various businesses, with the accounting firm you mentioned, Greg, in the wellness industry that I mentioned, and I found that's what I'm naturally good at is how do I take a vision that an entrepreneur has, and how can I help them achieve that vision? And what I've learned, we've talked about this, I think, Dave, is that the skill sets that make for a great entrepreneur aren't necessarily the skill sets that make for achieving results. In other words, what makes for great entrepreneurs, at least what I have seen, is, they're risk takers, they're dreamers, they have lots of great ideas, but they're not generally great at execution on those great ideas, or at saying no to some great ideas, or not right now to some great ideas. And they might end up at a place that they weren't trying to get to. So, part of life, and you do this, Dave, with your coaching, is helping people sort of recognize what they're good at and what they're not good at. And really what I found is that I'm good at helping a business owner achieve more of the results that they want, and hopefully a little bit faster, because I'm good at, maybe this is my legal training, whatever it is, but I'm good at seeing what the end result is and then reverse engineering that to how are we going to get there? What do we need to do? What are the potential pitfalls? How are we going to overcome those? So, so I did that for like 10 years for various business owners and entrepreneurs. And, but what I learned through that process was that, those were businesses that the first one was a business that was trying to get to $1 million. The second one was a business that's trying to get to, let's say, $10 million. So there are different challenges when you're at those different ranges, but in both cases, they had the resources to have me on board. What about businesses that don't have maybe the resources to have someone like me on board? How can we help those business owners sort of systematize this process of executing on their strategy? So that's sort of how I came across this idea of how can we build this framework that I can introduce to a business owner and kind of train them on it, but then I can leave. And it's, by the time I leave, it's kind of systematized in their business, whether they like it or not, right? And so that's kind of the genesis of what I call the whole pie management system. And the pie, as Dave alluded to, is profit, impact, and enjoyment. And we can talk a little bit more about that if you guys like.
Let's jump into it. I love the pie acronym is perfect.
And having the whole pie, and this whole idea, like, and Andy's going to talk about it now, but it just makes so much sense. You could be a highly profitable company, but if you're not having, and how important impact is to you, Greg, if you're not having impact, you're not feeling it, right? Or if you're not, you might be profitable and have some impact, but you're not enjoying it, and I think the very act of helping a business, anyone actually, but a business owner, just stop and actually set some goals, especially if you're trying to set, it kind of in a few different areas, like this idea of the pie, is in itself really valuable. But then there's more to it, and Andy will tell you about that. But how did you come up with like the whole like concept of pie?
Yeah, it was just really around what are we trying to accomplish? Like, when you sit back at the end of the day, what are we, as people and as business owners, like, what are we trying to accomplish? And sort of my model and my sort of philosophy around it doesn't resonate with everybody, and that's okay. But like, for me, it's these three areas. It's like the money part. Like, if you're in business, you need to make money. Like, that's like, let's not hide the fact that, you guys are business owners, you need to be profitable or you're going to cease to exist. So, super important. The impact part of it is, what I would call the kind of the non-financial goals that you'd have in your business. And impact can be a number of different things. It's how the business owner describes or defines impact for themselves. And it could be, it could be changing the world. It could be curing cancer. It could be saving the planet. But it also could be, how do I make things better for my employees? How do I make things better for my customers? How do I make things better for my community? And that can be writing checks. It can be volunteering. It can be, it can be measuring the satisfaction of your employees to make sure that, they're having a great experience as being part of your business. It's measuring the satisfaction of your clients. We're all in business to make our clients' lives better in some way. And so let's measure that. Are we in fact succeeding in making our clients' lives better? So the impact side is let's build some goals around that. Like, what do we want to, who do we want to impact and how do we want to do it? And let's set some goals around it. And then the third one, which in many ways is most important, is let's enjoy the process of doing this. And I think that one really gets left behind. You know, being a business owner it's difficult, right? Particularly a small business owner where you don't have a ton of resources. You're always, you know, strapped or not always, but in many cases you're strapped for resources. And so you end up doing maybe more things than you actually should be doing. You are doing things you don't like doing because they need to be done. And maybe you either can't afford to hire someone to do them, or you don't think, you know, you're afraid to delegate, or there's all those things that crop up. But at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying the process of building your business, I think you need to step back and say, what do I need to do here to change so that I can start enjoying the process of building this business? And similarly with profit and impact, you set goals around that. So, okay, well, what does enjoyment look like in my business? Like, how will I enjoy it more? What do I want to do? Do I want to take more time off? Do I want to, do I want to have more socials with my team? Or another way to look at it is what's one or two things that are really frustrating me in my business. And if I can solve those frustrations, then sort of by definition, I'm going to enjoy my business a lot more. So there's a lot of different ways you can come at the enjoyment part. But I find that if you structure your goal setting in those three areas, you know, you're gonna hit the most important things. And then it's about going out and executing on that. And there's a whole part of the system around accountability and how do you actually make sure that you stay accountable to what you to those goals and to your plan, and so that ultimately you get those results in those three areas of your business.
That's awesome, Andy. And so how do you work with, let's say, a $1 million or $2 million or less company? What does your engagement look like? And it sounds like it gets to a point of automation, which is awesome for the entrepreneur. It sounds like that's a point where you move on to whatever your next client is. But yeah, how much time are you working with? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, so so the starting point is, okay, what's your capacity as a business owner, right? Like where, and most business owners don't have much capacity. They recognize there's a problem, but they don't have a whole lot of time. So step one is, how do we create more time for you, right? We do a stop doing exercise where we figure out where you may be spending time, where you don't need to be spending time. What can you be delegating? What can you cut out of your day? So how can we carve out some time? And then it's some business owners will want to like say, let's do this, like let's take a weekend, or let's do this in a week, or a couple days this week, couple days next week, and let's just plow through the system so that we can implement it. More regularly, though, it's like a 3-month type engagement where we would get together once a week for about 90 minutes and sort of stepwise, bite-sized chunks, and slowly train the business owner in the system and slowly implement it. So it's less overwhelming. And at the end of 3 months, we're at a point where the systems are in place, that accountability structure is in place, so that I make sure that either I become that ongoing accountability partner, or I make sure that somebody else in their business or a leadership team, they keep each other accountable to the plan and to the system that we've set up. Does that kind of answer?
Oh, 100%. So it really does feel like you're in the world, Dave's world, if you will, like in the coaching world, with a system that you're helping to integrate. So that clarifies it really well. That's fantastic. How's it going so far, Andy? As far as the approach and the feedback, and because a couple years now in, or where are we at now for like? Yeah, the pandemic has warped my sense of time.
I know.
So.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so I've been, even the roles that I mentioned earlier have all been consulting roles, but they've just been sort of long-term, full-time consulting. So the actual consulting business has been going for about 10 years. The whole pie system is something that I created literally in the first couple of months of pandemic life, where we all sort of had that extra time to sort of, I shouldn't say we all had extra time. I ended up having some extra time just given the nature of my business. I'm sure a lot of business owners had just the opposite. They're scrambling to try to stay in business. But I took a step back and sort of collected, what is it that how do I bring value? What is it that I know? What is it that I've learned? And how can we package this in a way like I've just described, in some kind of easily digestible framework that can be implemented in pretty much any small business. And so the short answer to your question, it's been about, a year and a half since we've rolled out the whole pie system. Feedback's been great. I think people really like the framework and just some of the terminology, like you mentioned, Dave, particularly where there's leadership teams are involved. They can all start to use the same language. There's about 20 different tools actually in the whole system that the business owners and the leadership teams use and implement into their business. And what I found is that some of the tools are, each client that I've worked with enjoys some of the tools more than others. In other words, some of the tools really hit on a pain point and help them solve that. For example, I have a key data tracker. So part of the process is, given what you want to accomplish, what are the KPIs? What are the metrics? What are the data points that we really want to measure to make sure that we're on track to achieving those goals? And then you build out a one-page key data tracker that you populate every week. Sounds simple. Not a lot of business owners do that. And if there's one tool more than any of that business owners say, wow, this is awesome, this really forces me to keep a pulse on my business every single week, that's the one that they point to.
Greg, I'll just give you a kind of tangible example of how, so I would have been one of those guys that, or people that Andy would go in, it's more like 90-minute chunks, works better for me. Because I actually, to be honest, I felt exhausted after the night. It's because you're thinking like, you're really trying to think of like, okay,
I know that feeling.
You know what I mean? And more like, I've always like the profit one was kind of pretty easy, because, I found a really interesting experience. The impact goals were, was I thought easy, but then and the value of having a sounding board like Andy was, at one point Andy said, so one of the impact measurements we have is like how many leaders we want to touch, like, exposed to coaching so I've got a metric around that. And then what you heard me say a few times, Andy, was, geez, you've talked about how much you enjoy keeping this roster of coaches busy, and how much I enjoy introducing a client to a coach, and hearing the impact that's having. So it became clear to me about that I actually want to support more coaches delivering more coaching to the leaders, right? So those two impact goals, and I was like surprised at like how motivating that is for me, right? Actually, and then guess what happens if I do that and I'm successful with the numbers I put, the profit looks pretty good because it naturally happens, right? But for years I've been chasing that revenue number, and I'm not really super motivated by money. I like money to do what I want to do, but I don't need gobs. Like, I know it's just not, like, you talk to my family, like I'm sure we've talked about this before. I think I mentioned this to Andy, but my parents would just be like, I was a kid, they go, Dave, like, you get checks for Christmas and stuff, and they would find the checks 2 years later that you can't cash. They go, Dave, why don't you just cash them, right? And so I was the guy that when I needed money, I go to my little brother and borrow it, and he'd charge me $2 of interest on every $10 I borrow or whatever, right? He always had the money.
Because he cashed your checks.
He probably cashed them, right? But it's just not a care in the world. So knowing that about yourself is probably important. So so it's a little bit embarrassing to say, but the revenue number is not hugely motivating to me. But that was the value of going through it. And then I mentioned to you earlier about we got this hot tub and the sauna and all the stuff we put into our house. Well, that was part of my enjoyment goal. So if we're doing pretty good, we can start making investments in a gym and all these sorts of things, and then starting to see them tangibly show up. And so that's a result. So I feel like the whole pie is starting to happen a little bit.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I love it.
I share that story because it's just a real example. Because sometimes we talk about what we do, and it's like kind of a conceptual thing. But I'm just this really
Yeah,
happened.
and what it's kind of neat also just knowing the whole coach approach, Dave, that you're always be wary of a coach who doesn't have his own coach. So it sounds like you engaged Andy for a season, and you're seeing you're seeing the fruits.
Yeah, like true. And I know Andy's not a certified coach, but he is a coach. He takes a coach approach, and that is so true. Beware of the coach who has no coach. Like it is hard to coach yourself through this stuff, folks. Like it really helps when someone says, "You know what I'm hearing you saying." It's like, oh, really? Yeah. It's like, yeah, actually, that would be an important thing to do. You know, I'm like, and then like in any coaching kind of scenario, you go, also, why didn't I think of that myself? But the problem is it's when you're ruminating in your brain, is that verbal processing can be so helpful, and just that mirror that, you know, and feedback.
Andy, what's the best way for our listeners to engage and be in touch and do some work with you? That might still be me one of these days. We'll keep on chatting after I get a few current projects off the table.
Yeah, no. So I can be found at Clarkie Consulting. It's Clarkie is IE at the end. You could Google the whole pie system and you should be able to find my stuff. There's a blog, like Dave mentioned, comes out a couple times a month. Really targeted to, you know, when I'm thinking about who I'm writing for, it's and who I'm serving. It's you know, it's small business owner and their leadership team. I mean, that's who I'm trying to help, because I just have such massive respect for business owners. Like literally, I've mentioned before, like I don't feel like, I mean, I have my consulting business, but I really don't see myself as having that entrepreneurial DNA. And so I really respect the people that are going out, they're kind of in the arena, and, you know, they're creating jobs and they're making things happen, like both you guys are. So that's who I want to serve. That's who I want to help. Like if you think about, you know, if you can help an entrepreneur, a business owner, you know, make a little bit more money, create a little bit more impact, and enjoy the process of that even a little bit more. I mean, that's a good day, right? Like that is, to me, that's the impact that I want to make. So that's what I'm up to. You can find me, you know, reach out and let's have a chat.
And I'd really encourage people to get, if you find this sort of thing interesting, our conversation today, the blog is, really, really well done. And you've been blogging for years. I know I've been, you know, the wellness lawyer I followed, and I was rooting for you, but I was in, you know, coming from a family of lawyers, like, I'm like,
yeah,
they can't like, and I'm going to pick on lawyers here, and I love lawyers too, and I got a lot of good friends, but I mean, the billable hour is just so antiquated. Like, what, you got to start by getting rid of it.
Terrible business model.
But they'll hang on.
Yeah.
Until the cows come home.
Until another global pandemic forces a change.
Well, I think it'll be more than that. So, and then I'm talking about, you know, there's all the people on the sidelines that are totally open to that. But that would have been a tough go. But thanks for sharing the whole pie system, Andy. Thanks for helping me, and I really wanted to promote you. So just, you know, I'll write the testimonial after. You can just point people to this podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. No, look, guys, thanks a lot for having me on, and keep doing what you're doing. I love the Boiling Point. I love how you're promoting, you know, our little corner of the world to all your listeners. So keep up the good work.
You know what? Every episode, I really do feel a little bit more connected to the hockey world. So you guys are all preparing me to have a normal conversation one of these days. So I appreciate you guys for that.
You should come over tonight and watch the game.
Watch the game. Go Habs, go.
Go Habs. Go. I can do that. Go Habs.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Boiling Point. Remember to rate and subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Boiling Point Pod. To see more from Dave Vale, check out leadershipunleashed.ca or visioncoachinginc.com, and on Twitter at Dave_Vale. And to catch up with Greg, visit hemmingshouse.com and at Greg Hemmings on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and remember, keep that pot boiling.